Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be trying to sew a swimsuit. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm actually not sure if I'm more nervous about trying to make a swimsuit or wear a swimsuit on the internet, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. You might be wondering, Summer, why are you making a swimsuit in the middle of a Minnesota winter? It's a good question. It is because I received a somewhat last minute invitation to Mexico to go to a resort for a week. And obviously, I couldn't turn it down. And I thought, what better opportunity to try sewing something that I've never made before that is completely out of my wheelhouse. If you watched my last video, I did a winter basics outfit in stretch fabrics to try to get a little bit of a sense of how stretch fabrics behave in preparation for this video, but I feel like a swimsuit is completely the next level. I've never made anything like this. I've never made anything of that sort of lycra form-fitting material before, and I'm nervous. We are definitely using a pattern today to keep us on track. There is no way I could do this without a pattern. I'm really excited to be trying the Vernazza two-piece pattern by Friday Pattern Company, which is one of my absolute favorite pattern brands. I think they make such cool, practical, and well-made patterns. Plus, there's lots of fun, little encouragements throughout the instructions and on the actual pattern pieces that you print out. Such a fun, well thought out brand. Hopefully it serves me well because this beginner doesn't know what she's doing and we're just going to hope for the best. Okay, I think my biggest goal and maybe my biggest concern is making something that fits and something that does not simply disintegrate when I wear it into the water. And that may seem like the absolute bare minimum for a swimsuit because it is. But as someone who's never made a swimsuit before, I think that those are honestly really good goals, is to have something that fits decently and that isn't going to fall apart. I found this fabric, obviously stretchy, obviously it's like a lycra spandex sort of situation. I think it'll be really cute and hopefully flattering. And can you tell I'm nervous? And then for the top, it suggested just using the same main fabric for a lining as well. And then on the bottom to use like an actual swimsuit lining. So I got this guy, which is not the cutest color, but it was what the fabric store had. And obviously it's just going to be the lining for the bottoms. So it doesn't really matter. So I went ahead and cut out my pattern pieces last night. I'm finding more and more that is just the biggest gift I can give myself when I'm making a project, is cutting out my pattern pieces the night before, because I find that to be a very tedious part of the process. And then when I get up the next day, I can just jump right into the project. But to get started, we start on the top, which is the more complicated portion. So I'm just going to put the bottoms pieces aside for now. You can see the top portion. You can see this is the front, and it has this funky piece that's going to turn into the front tie, which I think is a nice feature because in terms of fit, depending on how tight you tie it, I think it will help cinch things in. So I think that'll hopefully be a really nice feature of this swimsuit. But to get started, I'm going to construct the main top piece and the lining top piece separately. And we're going to place some swimsuit elastic to help hold everything in, and then join the two pieces together. Let's get into it. If we haven't met yet, my name is Summer, and while I have chatted on for several minutes about this project, I have not yet introduced myself. So hello. I primarily make videos about the sewing projects that I'm working on, and this year is especially exciting because I've decided not to buy any clothes from the store and instead to make any new clothes that I want or need, including this swimsuit. So if that sounds like fun to you, I invite you to stick around, maybe consider subscribing, and enjoy the ups and inevitable downs of this challenging project. Okay, so I've got the front piece pinned to the back piece, and we'll do the same thing for the lining as well. And I'm just meant to stitch along the sides here and then along the shoulder seams here. I should probably sew up a little sample piece of this swimsuit material. That's something that I'm not very good at doing, is trying a sample piece to make sure that I have the right stitch length, thread, everything. But I probably should do that before I stitch on the real thing. Okay, I just sewed up a little sample piece. You probably won't really be able to see it on camera, but I'm glad that I did because I messed with the settings a little bit. I think I'm gonna end up keeping the stitch width and length the same as I did for last week's video when I was sewing with stretch. So I have both the length and the width set at 2 for now. And then I just turned the tension down because the first row that I sewed came out a little bit like bunchy. So I turned the tension on my machine down to 2, and that seemed to fix the problem. The pattern does have some specific spots where it calls for or like recommends certain stitch lengths, so I'll have to pay attention to that. And I will also have to pay attention to different steps in this pattern use different seam allowances. So as someone who is not that good at paying attention to seam allowance to begin with, I'm definitely going to have to be eagle-eyed and like very meticulous about each step following the correct seam allowance, because otherwise I'm going to mess it up. But okay, let's start. Let's actually start. Okay, guys, first step is done, and I gotta say, I love any pattern where I get to do a partial try on after the first step. Obviously, this is not what the finished product is exactly going to look like, but to literally get to try it on after the first step and assume that it can only get better from here, very exciting. I think it's super cute. I think it's super cute. It's literally summer. We've done one step. I just wanted to show it off because maybe we can see how much better it looks at the end as compared to the excitement that I feel about it now. So next up, we're going to add the swimsuit elastic, which I got this thin little elastic, and it actually calls for quite a lot of this because basically it's going to go around like everything in the swimsuit. It's going to go like all the way through here, around the armholes, around the leg holes. So that length adds up quickly. But Friday Pattern Company actually has a really good tutorial online of how to add elastic into swimsuits because there's like a very specific quartering technique to it. So I will try to walk you through what I learned from the video, but my videos are never really a tutorial. If you're actually making this, there is a proper tutorial from Friday Pattern Company on how to do it. Okay, I just got off the phone with my sister that I'm going to Mexico with, and I'm even more excited now about this. But I just want to walk through a little bit of what I'm doing with the swimsuit elastic. So basically I cut out the length as defined in the pattern. They did mention like obviously alter the length depending on what you need, but since I'm starting from scratch and I don't know what I need, I just went with the recommended length based on the size that I'm making. And what they described doing is essentially quartering the elastic. So I chose black elastic, which means that I can't draw on it. So I've just put pins in at the halfway mark and then at the quarter mark. And I'm just meant to divide up the elastic along the top of the lining. So it'll go like all the way around the top back, around the top front, and then around the top other back, just with one piece of elastic. And the goal is to stretch it around evenly so that the edges like cinch in and keep you in the swimsuit. I think that's everything. So I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning this in place, and then we'll try sewing it. Okay, that was a little bit challenging to stretch the elastic the appropriate amount all the way through and keep it on the right seam allowance. And I don't know if I did the best job with it, but I'm going to go ahead and attach the main piece to the lining piece and turn it right sides out. And hopefully it looks okay. See, like I feel like here I bunched it up a lot more than like along the back, but realistically, I think that'll be okay, better than the other way around because I'm going to want more tension on the front than on the back. But yeah, now just attaching the main fabric to this lining fabric, right sides together. The pattern recommends shortening the stitch length around the ties if you want a little bit of extra security or you think you're going to be tying them tight. So I am going to do that because I feel like I'm going to want to be cinched in, you know? Yeah. Okay. It felt like stitching that one line took forever because I was trying to be really careful with it. But essentially, I have the lining piece and the main piece sewed together now. I just sewed along the inside of the elastic that I just put in. When I turn it right side out, I don't want the elastic to show. So I just made sure that I was just inside of the elastic, and then also sewed all the way around the tie pieces. So now it says to trim away the excess and turn it right sides out. I would be curious, something I've been thinking about more and more, and maybe someone who knows more about sewing than I do can tell me in the comments. Why is there so much excess? Like, I see so often in pattern instructions, sew at such and such seam allowance, which seems really large, and then you trim away the excess and turn it right sides out. And sometimes I just wonder, like, is that for a specific purpose? Like, I assume that it is, but do you know what I mean? Like, why do you just not use a smaller seam allowance? Like, I understand that you don't want to use like a teeny tiny seam allowance, but like when you're sewing with a huge seam allowance and then you trim away the excess, sometimes I'm just like, that feels like a waste of fabric. I don't know. Again, if someone else knows more about sewing than I do, which I'm sure some of you do, please feel free to leave a comment. Okay, before I do trim away the excess, I'm just going to turn it right sides out to make sure that I did it right and that everything looks okay. Okay, yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. Basically, I just wanted to make sure that the elastic is going to be encased inside everywhere and it didn't like poke out anywhere, which I think it did. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut away some of the excess and turn it out properly. She's starting to look like a real swimming suit top, which is exciting because that's what we're making. Next up, we need to add elastic to the armholes. I'm going to baste together the lining piece and the main fabric around the armholes, and then add a piece of elastic to each armhole, kind of similar to how we did on the front and back piece. And then we're starting to get close on the top. I know that I always do this when I'm like several steps away from being done. I'm like, we're so close, we're almost there. But this is really going a little bit quicker than I thought it was going to. So fingers crossed, as long as I don't make any big mistakes that I need to redo, I think we're moving along at a nice pace here. Once I had the elastic sewn around the armholes, I had to, you guessed it, cut away the excess. Then, instead of turning things right side out like I did earlier, I was just meant to fold the elastic over toward the inside of the garment and stitch it down. I never realized it before, but if you look at a swimsuit, this is how most of the seams are finished. Unfortunately, this is where I started to have issues interpreting the pattern correctly. Especially on the top where the lining fabric and the main fabric were the same, I found it kind of confusing figuring out which side to stitch the elastic on, which way to fold it over, etc. Oh, you guys, I think I made a mistake. I was finding this step in general of doing the armholes to be kind of confusing in terms of like which was the right side and the wrong side and the lining and the main fabric. I probably should have put a marker on the lining just because I'm using the same fabric for both the lining and the main fabric. There was a whole thing about like leaving a little bit more of the lining fabric out on the armhole so that the seams would end up rolling towards the inside of the garment. So like here, I can show you on the other one. So this is meant to be the lining that's like poking out more, because then eventually when the seam is finished, it should mean that the seams will roll towards the lining rather than towards the outside. But what I'm stitching now is this top stitch, and I'm just realizing this should then be the outside, but this seam is now wanting to roll the wrong way. Hopefully that makes sense, but clearly I made a mistake somewhere. Like I must have mixed up the lining and the main fabric somewhere along the way, which understandable because it's the same fabric. But now it's like I'm finishing one side of it the right way. Like on one strap, half of it is finished the right way and half of it is finished the wrong way. So I'm worried it's going to look really bad. I'm now like so deep in it. I think I'm just going to finish the step that I'm on and I'll do a little try on. We'll just see if it looks terrible and if I need to do something about it. Because I'm a little bit nervous with this fabric. It is somewhat delicate, and I'm nervous that like tearing out a bunch of stitches is going to ruin the fabric or at least make it look not great. So I'd like to avoid that if possible. But yeah, we'll just finish the step that we're on and then see. I'm trying to film more of these moments. I have these moments with every single project of something going wrong or me misunderstanding a step and doing something wrong. And it is my gut instinct to just try to fix the problem. But I recognize that it's like more helpful for you as the viewer potentially, or at least entertaining or interesting to see me work through the issue. And especially if it's something that's like, if you're also trying to make the pattern, I always say that my videos are not a tutorial, but if you're similarly struggling with this step, maybe you can avoid whatever issue that I have just caused myself. So anyway, let's keep going and then we'll evaluate. Okay, just have it on over my shirt, obviously. I think that the rolling issue that I was concerned about is actually fine. Like it's maybe not great and super professional, but it's not a big issue. The bigger issue that I'm noticing is I have a little bit of gapping here. What I should have done is probably make the elastic a little bit shorter. I just didn't realize that I needed to. So I think probably at the end, I'll end up doing like some sort of dart or something just to tighten this up a little bit. But otherwise, I think it's fine. I don't think I need to go back and like repeat any steps. So that's good. We love that. All right. I need to break for lunch and then I'm going to finish the other armhole and we'll go from there. I am back from a somewhat indulgently long lunch break. I have a coffee. I'm going to blame the cat on the lunch break because she snuggled up with me on the couch and we had a little nap together, which was really nice. But now I'm back into the swimsuit. I actually just finished the other armhole and I somehow ended up doing it wrong, but like in a different way than I did the first one wrong. And I don't really know how that happened. So on the first one, I did end up like putting the elastic somehow on the wrong side. And so it's like rolling out towards the wrong side on the front here. But at least, so this bottom side had the armhole elastic on it. And I at least set up the elastic so that I was like folding over and like encasing the elastic when I did the top stitch. And somehow on the other side, I didn't do that. And I didn't notice that I didn't do it like until the very end. So on this side, you can see the elastic is technically still exposed. So this side looks really ugly. But to be fair, the first side doesn't look that much more professional. I don't know, guys. At this point, I'm just going to keep going. I think it would be more effort than it's worth to unpick it and like do it all again. Plus, like I said earlier, I'm a little bit worried about how the fabric would hold up to being unpicked and then restitched. Honestly, the biggest bummer of sewing these in the wrong way and essentially ending up with the lining becoming the outside layer, like obviously it's the same fabric, but I did intentionally choose, I don't know if you can see on the camera, there's like a couple of spots that just have some discoloration on the fabric. And so I intentionally chose those pieces to be the lining pieces. And now they're not. Now they're the main pieces that are going to be on show. So I'm a little bit annoyed about that. You know what? We live and we learn. If I wanted to spend a whole other day on this swimsuit, then I might unpick it and try to do it again a little bit more meticulously. But I'll be honest, I don't want to do that. I feel like I am the queen of just learning lessons for next time. Like I see some sewists here on YouTube who are really, really good at faithfully unpicking and doing it correctly before proceeding. Honestly, if I can get away with a little mistake and it's not going to like completely ruin the garment, I more often than not just keep going. I would be curious if you are a sewist, which side you fall on. Are you someone who like really sticks with a step and redoes the step until it's perfect? Or are you someone who does an okay job and then moves on? Like, obviously, if I were making this for someone else, I would treat it differently. But because I'm just making it for myself, sometimes I'm like, is it worth the extra time and energy to redo it? And right now, I think it's not. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the waistband, the bottom waistband of the top. Bottom waistband of the top. Yeah. But this is the last bit of the top that I need to do. I'm going to speed through it and then probably try on the top before moving on to the bottoms. But I'm really excited because the pattern notes that the top is significantly more difficult than the bottoms and more technical. So I really feel like we're over the hump. All right, let's keep going. Adding the bottom band here was pretty simple, though the pattern did offer a few options for modifications at this step, including adding an elastic band to offer more support or adding padded cups. I happen to hate those removable padded cups, and I decided I didn't want to add the extra elastic, so that made my waistband pretty simple. Okay, we're nearly done with the top. I decided not to add elastic to that bottom waistband piece. Instead, I just did 2 rows of top stitching. I don't know if you can see. I don't love the finishes. Maybe it's because I'm not practiced with these type of like stretch finishes, but they just seem a little bit clunky to me. Ultimately, those are going to be on the inside of the garment, and you'll only see what's on the outside. I have decided that I would like to put a little reinforcement on the back. So this is the back piece, and I want to just put like a little loop around here because I think it'll really help with that gapping issue that I was having, and it'll provide a little bit more lift and support. My thought was essentially to just use some scraps of the same fabric and make like a little loop kind of like this to go around it. My thought is to literally just wrap it around the straps and sew it down. It's maybe a little bit clunky. It's maybe not as clean and sophisticated as it could be, but I think it will be functional. Now, oh gosh, I might have to hand sew this. So it's pretty tight. I'm gonna have to hand sew it. Hand sewing is not my favorite thing to do, but it's just like way too tight to try to fit into the machine. So please hold for a tiny bit of hand sewing. Okay, we've done it. I don't know if it's the most like elegant solution, especially because hand stitching is not my forte. So this finish is a little bit questionable. So essentially the back straps are now just like kind of cinched in, and my hope is that the cinch will kind of sit wherever it needs to provide the support. But obviously I can tack it down if I need to put it in like a certain place. But okay, it's starting to get dark and late, so I'm going to, I think, leave it here for tonight. I was hoping to move on to the bottoms today, but there's just no time. So yeah, super happy that we finished the top. Thanks for sticking with me so far. It's been a journey of a day. The next morning, I got straight into making the bottoms, which involved sewing up the side and crotch seams on both the main fabric and the lining, and then sewing the lining fabric inside the main fabric at the waist, and adding the waistband to tie it all together. This all should have been very straightforward, but somehow in my rush to finish the swimsuit before I had to pack for Mexico, I made a rookie error that ended up costing me most of the morning. You guys, I have really bad news. I've just been working away on these swimsuit bottoms this morning, which I thought was going to be really quick, but I think I just realized that I might have put the lining in the wrong way. Like somehow I confused the waist opening in the lining with a leg opening, and I don't really know how I did that. And I'm not even positive that that's what I did, but I am now at the stage where I'm going to put the leg elastics in. And it's just like the main fabric and the lining fabric do not match up. And I know for a fact that they were cut from the same pattern pieces and the stretch on them is not that different. So I think I messed something up. Let me try to show you. Okay, so you've probably just seen me put this waistband on. And so now I just basted a stitch around, but like it's like bigger in the lining here than it is in the main fabric. And then I felt like I had to pull like quite hard on the main fabric to get it to match the lining fabric. And like there's places where the main fabric seems bigger than the lining fabric. So I don't know. I don't know why I didn't like catch it earlier. I just have to think that maybe I like somehow turned the lining around and put it in the wrong way, because it does not make any sense to me why it doesn't fit together. And like here. So then on the other leg that I was about to sew, this is what really tipped me off. So this bit of lining is like super, super short. I don't know if you can see. So it's like all up in there. And so then I just suddenly had this green light moment of like, I bet this is supposed to be the crotch seam. And somehow I confused it for this, which is too long. And this is probably meant to be a side seam. I feel like every time I think I'm doing like a really easy step or an easy part of the pattern, I just make silly mistakes like this. And I'm going to be honest, I'm so freaking frustrated at this. I think I'm going to have to like rip basically the whole thing out, like everything that I did this morning, and redo it. Oh. Okay, I'm going to do probably a whole lot of seam ripping. And then I don't know when I'm going to pick up the camera next, but I'm sure you'll see whatever I end up finding out. Okay, I just seam ripped for the better part of an hour, basically brought myself back to square one where I was this morning, which was a little bit soul destroying, but obviously necessary. I will say I was worried that the fabric would like not take very well to seam ripping and resewing, but I think it's actually more resilient than I thought it would be. So that's good. So yeah, now I'm kind of back to square one. I don't know how much I'm going to film of doing essentially the same steps over again, but I think I'm going to take a little brain and soul break and then come back to it this afternoon and hopefully kind of speed run the process, but do it correctly this time. So, all good things in the end. I mean, looking at the pieces now, I honestly have no idea how I made that mistake. Like, why? I feel like there were many red flags, but maybe I just started early this morning and didn't have enough coffee and my brain was like not engaged. When I was like first sewing the waistband, I was like, huh, this is interesting. The lining piece seems to be a lot shorter than the main piece. Weird. And now I'm like, well, duh, because you were sewing a leg piece to the waist piece, which I don't even know how I did that. But all part of the process, all part of the process. I love to sew, I love to sew, I love to sew. All right. I will probably catch up with you once I'm like kind of back up to where I was before. All right. Okay, we are back up to speed where I left off when I discovered the problem. It went much smoother this time. Funny how when you have all the pieces in like the proper layout, things do tend to go faster. It's really like kind of astonishing to me that I didn't realize how wrong it was. I just kept thinking like, gosh, did I like really miscut this piece, or like did the lining is the lining fabric like not compatible with the main fabric? Anyway, I did the exact same thing. This is how it's looking right now. The only difference is on the actual waistband. Last time I did a zigzag stitch to finish it, and this time I did a straight stitch, tried to do a stitch in the ditch to finish it, and I think that it looks a little bit cleaner and I'm happier with this finish. So actually a blessing in disguise. They are currently looking like a little bit granny panty-esque, but I swear they're going to be high-waisted and cute. So now just need to add the elastic to both leg holes the same way we did with the armholes, although hopefully I do it correctly the first time. And that's it. Then the bottoms are done. So yeah, I'm excited to press on and finish this up and then take this to Mexico and show it off there. Let's keep going. Okay, I feel like third time's the charm with this elastic situation. And it was much easier to figure out on the bottoms because the lining is a different color to the main fabric. Essentially, just in case anyone is curious how I was supposed to be doing it the whole time on the top, you put the lining fabric and the main fabric together and baste around the armhole or the leg hole. And then on the lining side, add the elastic just to the inside of that basting stitch, basically using the basting stitch as a guide. And then I'll cut off the excess, cutting off the basting stitch as well. So I'll just be left with this bit of elastic at the edge. Then I'll flip the elastic and do a top stitch to essentially enclose the elastic on the lining side. So I don't know why I found that so confusing with the top. I think having the lining and the main fabric be the same fabric made it especially confusing because you couldn't easily tell like which side was meant to be the inside and meant to be the outside. But using a different fabric was very helpful. So hopefully that explanation is helpful in case anyone was confused like I was. At least I figured one thing out with this swimsuit. I usually do my outros from the other angle, but I feel like the natural light is maybe actually doing me a favor this time around. But you guys, I did it. I finished the swimsuit and I just put it on in the mirror and had a whole moment of, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I just made this myself. Now I'm going to make you wait like a minute to see what it actually looks like because I would much rather take some pictures and video of this swimsuit in her full glory down in Mexico rather than take them in front of the mirror here in cold Minnesota. But she turned out so great. I feel like I learned so much in this process, even from like where I started with the top to the bottoms today. It was literally a 2-day make, but I can already see improvements in my technique with this sort of super stretch fabric from the top to the bottoms, which just excites me greatly because that's my favorite part of sewing is getting to work through a pattern and feel like at the beginning you know nothing and you don't know if you're going to be able to make the item, and then getting to the end of it and being like, oh my god, I just did that. I just made it. I have to say also, I cannot remember the last time I put on a swimsuit and was like really feeling myself and really felt bold and confident and strong. And I put on this swimsuit, and I don't know if it's the cut of the swimsuit or the fact that I made it myself, and so I feel very tender about it, but I'm feeling myself in this swimsuit. I think that I look great. And it's been a really long time since I felt that way in a swimsuit. So that's really exciting. It just goes to show, I think sewing is amazing for so many reasons, but learning to make things that suit your body and make you feel confident is one of the number one reasons I started sewing. And I still continue to impress myself with being able to make things that I would have thought might make me feel uncomfortable or weird or like I wouldn't want to put them on the internet, but I don't even know what I'm rambling about. Basically, I'm really happy with how the swimsuit turned out. As you saw, there were plenty of hiccups along the way. I don't think I've ever had to take apart quite as much as I did today. Like I had almost finished the bottoms and I had to take it all apart. And yesterday there were definitely hiccups that I chose not to take apart and do again, which now I'm like, well, at least I know for next time exactly how to do it so that those issues hopefully won't come up again. But those hiccups are like all part of the process. Even though this morning I was super frustrated with how the bottoms were going, I am so glad that I worked through it. And yeah, I'm just super happy with the final result. So thank you so much for watching. I know that a swimsuit video in the middle of January is a little bit off season, but hopefully it's inspiration in case any of you are going on a winter getaway vacation. Otherwise, maybe you're watching this in the summer, in which case, great, perfect. I am exactly on season. Yeah, anyway, I know we need to get to the final shots of the swimsuit itself. Thank you so, so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below with what you're working on right now. And please consider subscribing because it really helps YouTube know to push out my channel to other great people like you. Without further ado, my me-made swimsuit. Bye.